I ask everyone I meet this question. If you could pull up an app on your phone and find homemade food and services in your neighborhood, like for instance, you can see that a neighbor fires up a wood burning bread oven every Thursday and bakes 100 loaves, or that the woman around the corner makes wonderful ferments like kraut and kimchi and yogurt. And maybe another makes a big batch of homemade soup twice a week or big salads from her garden. Or that family 2 blocks away makes lunch 5 days a week for dine in or takeout. If this was all within, say, a 1 or 2 mile radius, depending on how densely populated your neighborhood is, would this be something that you'd be interested in? Without fail, the answer is always yes. There is no lack of interest in homemade products and services. What we lack are the people offering these products and services. In order to understand why there are so few of these types of home based businesses in our communities, we need to step back and talk about cottage food laws. Now, back in 2012, on September 21st, AB 1616 is the California Homemade Food Act, and it was signed into law by Governor Brown and became effective on January 1st, 2013. And this law allows certain foods, known as cottage foods, to be made in private homes and sold to the public. I love that they chose the word cottage to represent home based businesses, the same word that historians use to represent the small holdings or the home based businesses of the agrarian era, the era right before industrialization. Products and services made in home cottages. Everything from textile making to pottery to candle making and furniture making, and of course, a lot of food stuff, produce and dairy and meat products, but also pickled and fermented goods, baked goods like bread and pie and cakes. I was thrilled when this law came to be. I mean, even though I was the founder of a commercial fermented food company at the time, I had started illegally in my neighbor's basement. And you know what? A lot of small businesses start this way. Now, decent people who were trying to make sure their concept was viable, wanting to start small before investing their life savings into a new venture, had a way forward without breaking the law. I was a vocal supporter of this law and mentored young businesses whenever they asked, even though I was really only a few minutes ahead of them. I really wanted to see as many local businesses born as possible, partly for altruistic reasons, but mostly for selfish reasons. I mean, I prefer small batch, lovingly made products and services. And I was in a position where I could afford to pay for them and went out of my way to prioritize buying them. But fast forward 10 to 11 years now, and many small businesses have gotten their start at home, and that's been great. But the local food movement really hasn't bloomed anywhere in a meaningful way. And the main reason is that local is just too expensive for many people. Now, I will say that local farms in Santa Cruz, near where I live, sell their organic produce for a really great price at farmers markets, and many accept food stamps, which is fantastic, of course. But on the other hand, today I paid $9 for a small loaf of bread at my favorite local bakery. Now there are only two of us, so it's not a big deal. We go through it pretty slowly and it's a treat. But, it's probably only enough bread for one day for a family of four. And if they wanted to eat that bread every day, we're talking like $270 a month just for bread. So most families buy the commercially produced larger loaf of bread for $3.50 or $4, whatever it is. I make our bread and it costs me about $1 a loaf for high quality ingredients, but I recognize not everyone has the time or the inclination to do such a thing. My point is that everyone would love these foods, but few of us can afford them. And at these high prices, local food makers still aren't getting rich. So, what's really going on here? Now, there are multiple reasons, but here's my take on just a few. Not enough training for local food makers to help them streamline their businesses. The second is issues of scale. And third, there are too many regulations. I'd like to share my perspective as a former food company founder. Now, many of us who hope to make and sell food to our community realized at one point that only the top 5% of our community could afford our products. So some of us, like me, expanded our businesses with the goal of making our products more affordable for more people through economies of scale. But that's not what happened. Because first, it gets really expensive as the complexity of the business increases. Economies of scale for the food business means significant investment in equipment because people are always your biggest expense, and that's where you can save. Now you need an engineer to manage the equipment, and now you need a team to manage everything from supply chain to marketing to accounting. The cost of doing business increases and gets more complicated before you ever see real economies of scale. And here's the irony. At one point, if you have a successful brand, one of the big boys will replicate your product and undercut you anyway. There's no way you can compete with the sort of scale they can get. So many small food brands that you know and love eventually sell to the big food companies in order to survive. I have friends who cashed out very successfully, and I'm so happy for them. But I have more friends who, like me, played this game and got burned. What started out as a genuine desire, to make nourishing food for our communities turned into a market economy exercise that just felt soulless. I have come to believe that we can do way better. We just need to be more creative. We need to prototype models that work for our communities. I know so many people who would like to work from home, but find the prospect too daunting because they lack the knowledge. We need low cost training programs so more people feel empowered to start these small cottage type businesses. They're not going to get rich, but they can make a living or at the very least supplement their family's income. As you'll hear from our guest today, a home business helped her escape the two income trap that we'll talk a little bit more about. And here's the other thing. It's getting easier every day to manage these types of businesses. In the old days, if you wanted to buy ingredients or supplies for your products, you had to go through big distributors who had minimum order requirements that were often really unaffordable, and they delivered in semi trucks. Now, that wasn't going to happen in your neighborhood, right? But now you can order almost everything you need online, and you can have UPS deliver it. There's Amazon, of course, but there are also small distributors like Azure Standard. If you don't know them, check them out, who'll deliver once a month or a week, depending on where you live. And local farmers are almost always willing to sell you their goods in bulk, which you can pick up at the farmer's market, or better yet, you can go to the farm with the kids once a week. So let's go back to scale. And that's where these devices in our pockets come into play. This technology, with all of its challenges, presents new opportunities for makers and consumers to find each other in entirely new ways. The main reason makers are forced to sell their goods for such high prices is they don't sell enough units. We can form private clubs where we buy and sell from each other. Those of us who really want these goods and services can organize ourselves into large enough, but still small, customer bases for our local makers. And finally, regulatory bodies. They mean well. I never found them to be in any way malevolent, but they're not home business friendly, generally speaking. The list of foods that can be made at home for a cottage business is really short. No dairy, no ferments, no meat. Essentially, you can make jams and breads and sweets. This just isn't reasonable. They also control how much income we can make. I mean, can you think of any other businesses that are handicapped in that way? And here's another example. You can't mix and match your home based restaurant with your home based bakery. So, in other words, someone comes to your place to eat lunch, but you can't sell them a loaf of bread to take home. Now, I understand the reasoning for some of the regulations. We can't allow a huge, noisy bakery with delivery trucks coming all hours of the day in our neighborhood. And there will always be people who push the limits and, break the social norms in a community. And we have to have measures in place to ensure that our neighborhoods remain livable. So I get part of it. But would it be so bad if some of our suburbs felt more like small villages? Multiple businesses on each block, backyard farmers and home bakeries and restaurants and seamstresses and small daycare centers and hairdressers and, I don't know, massage therapists. How about a local nurse practitioner? And because our neighbors, are making their products right in our communities, transparency and these interdependent relationships, they help build and keep our communities safe. We can create these types of communities, but we need to start by supporting the people in our communities who are attempting to reunite home and work. And we can do that by helping them find the resources and giving them the protection they need until they can get their businesses rocking and rolling. All of us stand to benefit if we can figure this out. This is the future I'm really hoping for. This is the future I really would love to see. And so did one of my favorite thinkers, Ramon Panikar, who said, and I'm slightly paraphrasing, the future is the well trodden paths between our homes. So, with that, welcome to our Reunite Home and Work podcast series, where we chat with the people who are making a living while making home. Today, we are interviewing Naëlle Yoshimura, the founder and proprietor of Gluten Free DIYers, a Bay Area bakery, a home based Bay Area bakery. She also writes a really great blog that we'll link below. Naelle is a chemistry teacher, and when she and her husband moved here to the Bay Area, she discovered that the cost of daycare for her two children would essentially eat her teaching salary. The classic two-income trap, right? Can't afford not to work, but can't afford childcare in order to work. So she got creative and she put her advanced degree in chemistry to work for her family by inventing new gluten-free recipes and selling them to her community from her home-based gluten-free bakery. She made time to talk to us today while our kids were napping. That's how busy she is. And luckily, they slept a little longer than normal. Enjoy. Hi, Naelle. Welcome.
Thank you. Hi, Catherine. Are you hearing?
So Naelle is a baker
Mhm.
and the founder of Gluten Free DIYers. Am I saying that correct, Naelle?
That's right.
Okay. Well, welcome again. And can you tell us a little bit more about your business and why you started it?
Yeah. So actually, what I started first is my home bakery, which is Yoshimura. And we're based here in Livermore, California. And it's a cottage food bakery. And I bake all kinds of things from my home kitchen and, sell them to people looking for birthday trees or just some good bread for the week. And I started that in 2022.
Mm.
And so this year I've started Gluten Free DIYers as well, which is a blog that's attached to the business, to the bakery business, where I share my recipes and I sell my dry mixes because I make all of my flours from scratch.
Can you say the name of your home business
Mhm.
again?
Yoshi sans gluten. So
Oh,
Yoshi is my last name, Yoshimura, and then sans gluten is gluten free in French.
sounds
Because the
good.
health department we can't actually say it's gluten free, but
Oh,
yes.
okay. But
Yes.
they're okay with it in French.
Well,
Uh,
the FDA does not have hold of the French language, so yeah, sans gluten is good to go.
no. So then how long have you when did you start that business? The Yoshi San Gluten?
Yoshi sans gluten was 2022. In
2022.
the end of the year, like November 2022, and then gluten free DIYers November 2023. So we're just moving
Wow.
right along.
Right. So can you tell us a little bit about why you started your businesses?
Yeah. I mean, honestly, before we moved to California, my husband and I got pregnant, and then it was the pandemic, and everything got crazy. And prior, to this, I was a chemistry teacher. And I also wrote a chemistry curriculum for teachers. And then when we moved here, it didn't make sense for me to go back to work, full time teaching while we also had a baby at home. We just looked at the cost of childcare I'm sure everywhere in the United States, but in California, it was, my entire salary. And it just didn't seem like I don't want to pay somebody to do what I want to do when I could be doing it.
Mhm.
I'm Canadian, I'm French Canadian, and so, like, that was an actual, like, cultural shock to see how much childcare costs around here because it's subsidized in Canada.
Mhm. How
Is
much
it
does it cost?
100%? Not 100% subsidized. I mean, I haven't been in, I haven't lived in Canada for 15 years, but it was $40 a week, back then.
Wow.
So
And what is it here for one child, just as a
yeah, so
and
uh,
approximately?
like $2,500 a month for a kid, and we have 2 kids
Wow.
now.
So does
So,
it double, or does it, or do they give you a little
oh,
bit
you
of a discount
yeah,
for the second?
10% discount.
Yeah,
Yeah,
10%.
And nothing really made
yeah.
Wow.
sense.
So,
Yeah.
it
Wow.
just, yeah, it didn't make sense. And so, it's hard living in California with the cost of everything. So it still made sense for me to, contribute financially. And so this business idea is really good because it's something I enjoy doing. It's a passion for me to bake. And then to also be able to contribute financially a little bit every month while staying home with the kids and being there for them and really working on my own schedule. Like it's perfect.
Got it. Did you take business classes ahead of time, or baking
No.
classes, or had you been a home baker? Did you just jump in and go for it?
I mean, so I was never a good cook or baker until I stopped eating gluten, which was
Mm.
13 years ago. And it's kind of like you go to the grocery store and you try the stuff and you're like, holy moly, this is no, I need to figure out how to eat something that I'm going to like. So that's when I really got into baking. And it's funny because I just changed my major so many times. But when I started school, I started as culinary arts, and then I took a chemistry class. I was like, "Ooh, this is fun. I'm gonna do nutrition." And then I took organic chemistry. Then I was like, "No, no, 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 no. I'm gonna be a chemistry major. This is so much fun." And I really got into chemistry, teaching, and I've always been also baking on the side. But there's such a good synergy between chemistry and baking, and
Yeah.
I feel like I'm in my own little lab, every day, and it's really fun.
Yeah, yeah, and I bet delicious.
Oh
Delicious
yeah,
fun.
nobody complains. Yeah.
So, how many hours a week do you think you work on your business, or between the blog
Yeah,
and the home bakery?
it's pretty wild. Um, a lot because there's a lot of things that like you don't necessarily think about that you have to do, which is something I had to get really good at this year is social media, and that can be like a complete time sucker. Like when I'm playing with my kids, I'm just like checking my phone or like, oh, there's a notification on Instagram, better reply, or here's, a customer asking something, a better reply. So like if you count that, I'm definitely working, a full-time job and a half, probably 40, 50 hours a week. Yeah.
Wow.
I
Wow. And how
know.
about without the social media, just like the actual in
Hmm.
the kitchen, planning recipes, delivering orders?
Mhm.
What would you say?
Um, and probably, like my kids nap, about 2 hours a day, and I'm always baking during that time. And then I have my husband, takes them when he comes back from work. So probably 4 hours a day. So 4 times, that's probably 20 plus hours a week.
Got
Yeah.
it. Got it. How old are your kids? Can we ask?
Sure. I have a 3.5-year-old and 1.5-year-old.
So
Yeah.
you're busy.
Yeah, they're yes, for sure is a handful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what predicated your decision to add the gluten-free blog? Are you transitioning the business
Mhm.
to that, or are you
Yeah.
doing both, or what's going on there?
It's a great question, and really, I'm having a little bit of trouble with the health department. Like they do what they have to do, and I understand the restrictions that a home bakery is placed under. Obviously, you have to serve things that are shelf stable, and you have to use ingredients that have been pre-approved. And I'm okay with all those restrictions when it comes to public health. But there are other restrictions, such as a home baker cannot register an LLC, which I find affects, and this is not in all of California, this is specifically in my county. Um, and that affects my family and that affects us. Like we really wanted to have an LLC. And so I would like to eventually start transitioning my business more towards the blog and offering dry mixes because there's less, liability with offering something like that. And I've been working with like cottage food advocates, and I've been in touch with the board of supervisor for my county, and I really hope that we get that resolved because it doesn't, whether I am a sole proprietor or have an LLC does not affect public health or the quality of my products. So hopefully we get that resolved, but I'm hoping that, either way the blog is going to take off and, continue growing as a side of my business.
Right. On the LLC, are you wanting to do it to protect an asset? Is that why you
Yeah.
want?
Yeah, and I
Got
think
it.
I mean, we're I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a tax specialist, and but I have them in my family, and the LLC is something that, my family in law would really like for us to be able to have. And so that, that's
Yeah.
important for me, and yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. We just had somebody else on who has decided to remain a sole proprietor.
Mhm.
I have been a sole proprietor. I've also had an LLC and an S corp, and it certainly is a little more protection, but sometimes it's not quite as much protection as you
Yes.
think it is. And it's such a hassle and it's so expensive.
Mhm.
So I'm a big advocate. Like if you're under 100 grand a year,
Mhm.
and you don't have a ton of staff,
Yeah.
I'm a big advocate for same, but I'm certainly not an attorney and every situation is different.
Mhm.
So, but it's really an interesting conversation. And how about, in terms of, um, the blog, how would you monetize that eventually?
Mhm.
Is that do you become like an influencer or how does
Oh,
that
jeez.
work? I don't know. I'm
No,
not
no, those
really
are
sure.
great questions. I mean, that to tell you just truth, I don't really know either. Sorry, I have trouble pronouncing that word. French is my first language, but when you're an entrepreneur, oh my god, well, when you're an entrepreneur, like there's just a lot of stuff you jump into, and you have, no idea what you're doing. But my understanding is that bloggers, at some point when you get enough traffic, you get to apply to ad network to monetize your blog. So, when people go to your blog, there's, just ads that are displayed on the page, and that's how you make money as a blogger. So the content would be free for readers, which is what I want to do. Like I'd love my recipes to reach, people that don't necessarily live in my community because, well, I don't want to brag, but like I make really good bread and I feel like people would like it.
Yeah, yeah.
And yeah, so that's one part of it is having ads on your page, and also affiliate marketing, like with Amazon, where I'd say like, "Hey, I have this bread maker that I really like. Here's the link." Or yeah.
Got it, got it.
Mhm.
Also going back sorry, Erin. Erin's gonna have a lot of questions for you because
Yeah.
Erin is a mom to be,
Oh,
and,
congrats!
so she's also figuring out, how she's gonna work from home and
Mhm.
be a mom and make a living while making home.
Yeah.
But I'm really curious about your business going back to that, like the dried ingredient,
Mhm.
how's that going? Selling the prepackaged, just add, water
Mhm.
sort of packaging? How's that going as opposed to say the products like the actual bread?
Yeah, so I mean, it's something I've started offering just like this month. It's brand new. So I
Got it.
haven't I
Got it.
haven't, made a lot of sales out of it, and really like again to social media, my social media group is very local. So they just, they'd rather me make the bread for them.
Mm,
So right now what I'm
yeah.
doing with the cottage food license, I'm allowed to ship within California. So I'm trying to figure out like, okay, how can I get the word out there to more households in California? And, that's something I'm working on, and I'm slowly growing my social media, and then hopefully that will take care of itself. Word of mouth.
Got
Mm.
it. So are you able to do most of your baking in your kitchen or have you set up another room or a garage or something with a baking studio?
Mhm. So per cottage food laws, everything has to be in my kitchen. So I can't store anything in the garage or in anywhere else. So everything is in the kitchen.
Mm.
Running out of space here. But yeah, we're making it work.
Wow. Did you see, have you read any of our stuff? Did you read about our Hearth Hub model?
No, I did go to your website and, I read the, your statement,
Case
your
for
goals.
support?
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
it really resonated, like how can you be a homemaker and a provider and make a living at the same time? Because it's two things that don't always work synergistically when like it should. But please tell me more.
Well, the Hearth Hub is a model that we want to prototype eventually within different communities around the country. And so we're raising funding to help us develop the first prototype. But if you are a member based hub and everybody pays a fee to be part of this hub, then you are a neighbor to neighbor network and you're selling and buying from each other.
Mm-hmm.
And there are some legal precedents that would indicate that you wouldn't need to be regulated.
Oh.
So so 2 quick cases. I don't wanna take up too much of our time because I know we don't have that much time, but it's important to know because it's something that we're so passionate about. Because I see, like, how are you supposed to you need to buy 100 pounds of gluten-free
Yeah. Yeah.
flour at a time. Why can't you store that in your garage?
Mhm.
In the proper containers, in a in a
Right.
dry yeah, trying to store all your ingredients in your own kitchen, that,
Mhm.
precludes a lot of people from being able to actually realize their business. So, anyway, there were these 2 little old ladies who made cookies in their church, kitchen and
Mm.
sold them to the, congregation in Florida. Somebody turned them into the health department, and it went all the way to the Supreme Court
Oh my
in
gosh.
Florida, and these ladies were fined.
Oh.
And so on the other hand, there's a yacht club, I think in California, and they charge, there's an application in order to become a member, a screening process, and then a meaningful monthly fee. But for like a hearth hub, it could be $25 a month or something. And you can't do any advertising for customers. And then that yacht club can do anything they want behind it. It doesn't, the kitchen doesn't have to be regulated.
That is
Isn't that
so
interesting? So
well, it is frustrating, right? That you could
yeah.
like yeah, that's what I'm finding, that there are laws and that there's ways to interpret them, and to me, that makes no sense.
Yeah.
A law should be a law, and
Yeah.
I like what you're saying about dysregulating home business. I feel like, I'm Canadian, I'm very liberal, and then I started this business, and I turned into Ron Swanson. I don't know if you know, but yeah, I am.
Yeah.
That's me now. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Well, if you're in business I've been in business, for many, many years in two different, I was in the restaurant business for
Mm.
23, almost 24 years, was a chef, owned a
Oh,
restaurant in Germany. And then I started a natural food business and ran that for a number of years, or 15 years altogether. So I'm, almost 40 years altogether in the food business. And I'm a little frustrated with both systems. There are too
mhm,
many middlemen, too many regulations, too
mhm.
many things that make it too hard for people providing important services and products that we
Yeah,
need every day.
yeah.
And you talk to anybody and who you ask them, would you like to have beautiful gluten-free bread delivered to you once a week? Would you like to have beautiful sauerkraut, bone broths,
Mhm.
yogurt, kombucha, pick up or how about 4 beautiful homemade meals? Um, Everybody wants that. Everybody
Of
wants an
course.
app where you could access all that. What we don't have enough of are makers who can
Mhm.
do it because it's so heavily regulated and
Yeah.
there's such a and it's unreasonable.
Mhm.
And so if you form groups of about 150 people who all agree, yeah, we're each going to put in $25 a month to have access to the service. Maybe 20% of those 150 people are makers. And then now as a maker, you've got 150 people who are really interested
Mm.
in, now maybe it's 120 adults, some who are really interested in your products. And
Right.
if you had 50 people a week ordering your products and you were just selling to them, you could also sell to other people outside, like through a
Mm.
farmer's market, depending if you wanted, how you wanted to manage your regulation. But it'd be just another avenue for makers like you to have a real customer base that you could sell to on a regular basis. So
So that's
anyway,
interesting because is that how I don't know if you know this, but in the San Francisco area, there's a organization called Chef, and I don't
mm,
know if that's what they is that what they do?
no,
No, okay.
chef
We've
with
talked
an
about chefs.
S.
Oh,
I've never we've
Chef
got a
with an
chef.
S is they're a middleman.
Mhm,
So you as a customer go on their website.
mhm,
Oh wow, I want Indian food tonight,
yep.
and there's this amazing Indian woman, and she makes you 4 beautiful meals, and they're delivered to you via Uber,
Mhm,
you know, tomorrow. I don't know how quickly the turnaround is. Well, what happens is she has to prepare the food in her regulated kitchen, and then it goes to this central kitchen, and it's packed with tons of stuff. It has to, I don't know if it has to be frozen, but it has to be refrigerated, of course.
yeah.
Refrigerated so you would reheat it. And, they charge you a lot of money for this service to be the middleman, and then the product comes in all of this packaging, this huge bag, these freezer things, like, it's so much packaging per
Mhm.
order. It's obscene. It's like, "Wait a minute, wouldn't you just rather stop by your neighbors on the way home and pick
Yeah.
up those 4 meals and
Okay,
maybe
so
they're in
you're
glass
trying to just
containers?"
cut out the middleman.
Yes.
Okay. Because I've
Yeah.
always wondered how people did that, like, because I know what it takes to have a cottage food license, and then I go on that website and I'm like, "Oh, they're selling meat, and they're selling, like, cream cheese stuff or things that need to be refrigerated," and I'm like,
Yeah.
"There's gotta be a different way to do it,"
Well,
but
they're technically on chef. Those businesses are home-based restaurants, so they're
Mhm.
the Mikos,
So
right?
there's Nico, yeah.
Yeah, not the cottage, and
Mhm.
so they are able to prepare some of this stuff,
Mhm.
and that's the other crazy thing, like, I had a sauerkraut company, right? And I made it all illegally in my basement to get started.
Okay.
That's how I started the business. You talk to a lot of small cottage, small natural
Mhm.
food companies, they almost all always
Yes.
started illegally, so good-hearted people trying to do the right thing for their community are now criminals.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And and, I'm telling you that because you're not allowed in a cottage food business in California to make sauerkraut. Like, I
Mhm.
don't think you can make anything, no yogurt, no,
No.
like, it's just, like, basically baked goods, that's it.
Mhm.
So, in a perfect world, you should be able to sell all these things.
Mhm.
We women and we homemakers and bakers and cooks, we've been cooking for people for, thousands of years, maybe
Mhm.
hundreds of thousands of years. We got this. We
Yeah. No, I agree with what you're saying. If you're making something like, if you're making something and it's good enough for your family, it should be good enough for your community.
That's
And
Mhm.
that's
right.
one thing that drives me completely crazy is that I don't know if you know this, but I have to submit a label to be approved to my health inspector for every single anything I wanna make. So if I wanna
Mhm.
make a chocolate cake with vanilla buttercream, that's one label, but if I wanna make it without eggs, that's another label, and if I want it to have green food coloring, that's another label.
Oh,
And there's, like, a huge turnaround, like, I submit one label, and then 3 months later, it's like, get back to me and like, "Oh, are the eggs baked or are they raw?" I'm like, "No, they're baked, please just approve it." You know?
Right.
And it's a lot of oversight that I feel is unnecessary and could be spent working, like, in a partnership, like, I feel like I'm the bad guy when I'm like, I'm a rule follower. I was a classroom teacher. I'm like, if there's a rule, it's there for a reason, I'm gonna follow it. So just, like, help me follow the rules, please. Like, work
Right.
with me, not against me, you know?
yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
and, back when we were villages, pre-industrial era, when everybody's home was a cottage business of some sort, right?
Mhm.
We relied on trust between
Sure.
neighbors and transparency. And,
Yeah.
even today, there are villages, say in Hungary. I used to go to Hungary a bit to visit a friend who lived there, and they had a machine out front of the grocery store that sold raw milk.
Oh. Oh.
And you just bring your own bottle, you press a button, and out comes raw milk.
Oh, yeah. Like
And
unpasteurized, you mean?
Yes,
Oh,
unpasture and it was delicious and
yeah,
amazing,
I've
and
tasted that once. It was amazing.
yeah, and so, I talked to some of the villagers, and I said, "Oh, yeah, if somebody's dairy is not clean, everybody knows it, because you
Mm,
have to be so clean in dairy."
mhm,
So they wouldn't be allowed into the co-op.
mm.
You make one mistake in the village, it's very
You're
hard to
done.
live down.
Yes.
And so that's the beauty of the neighbor to neighbor network.
Mhm,
Everybody knows everybody, and you, as a maker for that community, have a responsibility to make
mhm.
sure that they're safe. And every maker I know takes that responsibility
Oh,
really
very
seriously.
seriously, yeah.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
like what you said about transparency. I think, like, especially when you're working with allergies, like, like, I wanna be so clear about what I put in my products, and I wanna make sure that the customer knows what they're eating, and that's another thing, like, last year, somebody wanted, a cake, but wanted me to use almond milk instead of milk. And I said, "Well, I can't do it because the health department's not gonna approve it, like, in time for me to make this for you." And I'm like, "Per the health department, I have to sell you this thing that will make you sick." You
Yeah,
know?
yeah, yeah.
Right.
Well, let's transition to the mom, business
Yes.
thing, and then we can finish up, with I have just a couple more questions. Erin, what are you thinking about all of it?
Your baby's on the
Well,
mind.
I'm thinking about how much time you spent on social media and
Mm,
thinking about the value that's in a neighbor to neighbor network in that you've got this consistent customer base. When I hear about the amount of time that you're spending, that is a huge amount of work
yeah.
for an unpredictable return. So,
Mm, so
um
true.
yeah, I mean, like,
And
it's
it
great that
takes you
you
away
can
from
do
your
it while the
kids.
kids are
Yes.
napping, yes, but you don't want it to yeah,
Mhm.
especially if you're trying to minimize your kids' screen time,
Mhm.
and you're spending that time on the phone is, it can create a conflict.
Yeah.
But I think that my big question is in how you sort of made the calculus on starting the business. What I mean by that is, you said that when you looked at childcare relative to what you could earn as a
Mm,
teacher, your take home would be effectively
yeah.
zero. And
Yeah.
so in that sense, it's an easy choice.
Yes.
But there's some people who, their margin's slim. And I always approach that conflict, that tension between do I work and put my
Mhm.
kids in daycare, but with the question, is there something that you can do from home to earn the difference
Yeah.
between what you'd earn in, your corporate job based on what you'd be spending in childcare? I just would love to hear kind of how you and your husband came about
Mhm.
making this decision. What was it that you were looking you don't need to give us numbers, but what was it that you were looking to sort of contribute, whether it was, fun money, vacation money, or was it bill covering? Like, what did that kind of look like for you?
Yeah. Um So it's really crazy. In the very beginning, when I started in November 2023, like I had like a 5-year goal in mind when I was like, I would like to, sell enough baked goods that every month, after ingredients and all of that are deducted, I could, bring $1,000 a month to my family just so we could just breathe a little easier
Mhm,
because it's
mhm.
like really expensive here. And, but when I first started, I'd sell like one pie a month. So I was like, okay, I've made $30 this month. I'm real far
Yeah,
from my
yeah.
goal. And, I'm part of like cottage food bakers communities and like we talk to each other a lot. And it just takes time to take off. It takes time for word of mouth to happen. And I mean, really, what happened for me was somebody found me and wanted cupcakes for a birthday. And I was able to accommodate that. And, they gave me like a super amazing review on like a local rents and raves group. And like 200 people joined my social media like overnight. And then I got so busy and I was like, whoa, that was like all it took. Like the first 4 months of having this business, I was like, husband, this is stupid. Like, what am I doing? This is not working. And then it just really exploded. And I I reached my 5-year goal like a long time ago, like in the first year, which
Right.
was really, really nice. And you said something else that just caught my attention about like how much time you spend on social media versus like being present for the kids. And it's so hard to balance when you're trying to do everything at once. And I'm sure there's a better way to do social media. Like I'm terrible at this. My students would see this and be like, Miss Yoshi, what are you doing? Come on. They're better than me at this stuff. Um, and yeah, sometimes it's just pure chaos in here. I'm trying to like answer somebody and then like, little brother wants a toy and big brother is like, no, this is mine. This is mine. And I'm like, just 1 second, guys, just 1 second. Yeah.
Right.
So it's sometimes I just feel like I'm a bad mom and a bad baker. And I'm like, what am I doing?
Mhm.
Well,
Yeah.
you're also new, right? So
Yeah.
you'll figure out systems.
Yeah.
I bet
Yeah.
in a year you'll have it down. You're a
Hmm.
teacher, you're a chemist, you've got that sort of brain. You'll
Hmm.
figure it out.
Thank
And
you. I
and
appreciate
and
that.
also the fact that like the minute people like it didn't take much at all for
Mm.
when once people discovered you, I know that there's a huge demand for this high quality, beautiful homemade foods. We
Mhm.
just have to figure out this piece of how to connect you
Yeah, to
with your
people.
neighbors
Mhm.
in a way that doesn't suck your lifeblood out trying to like keep up with social
Mhm.
media. I mean, you should
Mhm.
literally have to post once a week. This is what I've got in
Mhm.
the bakery. This is what's happening, and it shouldn't have to be a
Mm.
big thing for you. I
Well,
hope we can get to that place.
the algorithm, I've looked into that a little bit, says you should be posting once a day,
I
and so I have to post once a day for the bakery and I have to post once a day for the blog. And so, that adds up. And I try to do it,
know.
like 3 days at a time or 4 days at a time, but I don't
Yeah.
always have content. Like yesterday I was trying to make social media content and I had a nice fresh bread, sourdough coming out of the oven. And I wanted to show like cutting it, putting in butter and like, taking a bite. And all you could hear from the video was out the background. So I'm like, oh no.
Well, that's also a beautiful part of your brand. I'm sure you that many of the cottage networking organizations that you're a part of are full with moms
Mhm.
doing exactly what you're doing. That's why you got into it in the first
Yeah,
place.
that's true.
Yeah. And
That's
I
true.
follow a lot of people on TikTok. You can always hear the kids in the background. I love it. It means, oh, she's a real mom. She's
Yeah.
really dealing with this.
Yeah.
So we should probably wrap up. And I guess the two questions I'd love for you to answer, and
Mhm.
I think you've answered them already to some extent, but what would you say has been the number one challenge of this journey for you? And what would you say has been the most rewarding aspect of
Mm.
owning your own home-based business?
Wow. Yeah, the biggest challenge, of course, is just balancing home and work. Like sometimes it's normal for a cottage baker to be really busy on weekends. And then, I feel guilty. Sometimes my husband's worked all week and I'm like, okay, you take the kids this weekend. I'm just going to bake, 7 cakes and like 20 loaves of bread. Thanks. So, it's hard to balance that. But I have a calendar now and I always book off one weekend a month where I take no orders. So that's helped, balance these things. Um, and then to answer the other part of your question, the most rewarding thing, honestly, it's just like it's it's the compliments. Like I just I think all bakers are like that. Like we bake because we just love it and we love feeding people and nurturing people. And then when you get good feedback, it's like a drug. Like I need more. you know?
Yeah. Well, and because you're not just like making their taste buds feel good, you're nourishing their body. And that's a really intimate
Mhm.
relationship between cook and
Mhm.
eater.
Oh yeah.
And it's very, very intimate. So that's a beautiful thing. And there's hard to put a price on that.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, gosh. Well, thank you so much. We'll link the information to both of your businesses down
Oh,
below
thank
in the
you.
show notes.
Thanks again for tuning into the Hearth Matters podcast. Catherine and I had a blast talking with both Naelle and Nancy from our previous episode about their home-based businesses and how they managed to set them up and navigate all of the legal and operational complexities. Our goal with this series is really to shine a light on those who've made the transition from their full-time jobs to being able to earn a living while making home and caring for their children in a way that they want to do and that also earns them enough income to cover the things that they need on their family's behalf. And it's a really beautiful thing because, as you heard today, not only are they getting to spend more time doing the things that they're passionate about and that bring them joy and that allowed them to care for their families, but they're also services and goods that will nourish and fulfill the local community. We'll continue to do more of these interviews, and we have a few cool series planned that we'll hope you will tune into. Be sure to like, subscribe, and rate this podcast wherever you're listening to it. And if you want to follow along with our work and get our newsletter, check us out at www.thehearthmatters.com, and we'll see you very soon.